Yeah, this is cool.
All right.
I love this. All right. Gabby, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm super excited to have you. Everybody, welcome back to Therapists Unmasked. We have our beautiful, lovely Gabby that we went to school with
Hi.
for our master's program. Well, let's give you the floor and introduce yourself. What license do you have? What are you doing for work? Tell me it all.
All right. Well, my name is Gaby. I am a licensed associate counselor. I'm currently working in substance use and mental health. So that's what I've been doing since I graduated.
Where are you originally from?
Florida. Wow. I came from Florida, but originally from Puerto Rico.
Wow. Okay. So
Yes.
We'll get into that in a second. Now, did you ever imagine yourself doing substance use?
No, that was something that I kind of fell into. I did my internship in a co-occurring program, and I was really scared, honestly, because again, it's not something that I necessarily saw myself doing, but I consider myself to be at least a pretty open-minded person. So I was like, okay, it's a new experience. Let me see how it goes. And I actually ended up really liking it. So when the opportunity to continue this line of work outside of school came up, I decided to take it.
So you did the grad program mostly in Florida, right?
Yeah, the whole first year was online in Florida from my bedroom.
At what point did you end up moving here?
Right before the second year. So when they announced that we could take classes in person for the second year, I packed up all my stuff and moved up here. We only ended up having like 2 classes in person, I think. But yeah, I had my internship and my practicum and then the trauma class in person.
Yeah.
That was it. The rest of my classes were all online.
Wow. Now, I think that both of you can relate to where you moved from one state to another. And this is for the both of you. How did that affect your mental health, if at all? Because that's a huge transition from going from one state to another.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's not easy, like transplanting your entire life, especially I'm an only child. So I'm really close to my parents and my parents stayed in Florida. So kind of moving far away from them all on my own to, a state miles and miles and miles away. That was a big transition. I grew up in Florida, so the majority of my life was in Florida. I think I was a little lucky in the sense that most of my friends by that point had moved out of Florida. So I was kind of like one of the last ones to leave. So I think that made it a little easier. It was like, okay, I'm leaving my parents, but everybody else is kind of pretty much out of Florida. And then when I came here, thankfully, because we did the first year online, I kind of knew some of the people in the program and we had like kind of talked, like Sam and I had talked a lot because of the research. So I'm talking like 6-7 hours a week outside of class.
Oof. Yes, it was a lot.
Yeah.
And then I ended up finding out that she actually moved into an apartment building like 2 miles from me.
We were really close.
We were even closer. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, that definitely helped the transition because you kind of already had a couple friends like built in. So that made it a little easier, but yeah, definitely getting homesick the first year was all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, it was a little different because I moved the first year.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I moved from my home state to school in 2020. I kind of already knew, well, no, I didn't know. I imagined that classes were going to be virtual, but I kind of said to myself, I want to live alone. I want to experience this journey on my own. Mm-hmm. And so I did move out in 2020, and it was a little different for me because I'm one of 3 kids, but I am the oldest.
Yep.
So the transition was a little different because my youngest brother, he had already done 4 years away from college, so I wasn't the first to leave. Mm-hmm. He was, but I'm the only girl in the family, so it was a different feeling. I remember, whenever I go on a trip or anywhere that's far away for an extended amount of time, my parents always say, like, we want to hear from you at least, once a day. Living alone, because I was so used to commuting from undergrad and seeing my family after school. Once I finished classes, I would just be in my apartment by myself, and I was like, oh, this is different. This is weird. I think I went from calling my parents or calling my mom once a day to maybe 3 times a day, and just saying school is hard. I miss the noise. That was the thing. I wasn't used to any quiet, because being from a big Hispanic family, quiet is not a thing in the household. So I was very, very tempted to put on some music or something and just make that quiet go away. Yeah. So it was very different.
Yeah, and I don't know how you did that first year all by yourself, because I don't think I would have survived the first year of grad school completely online if I hadn't been at home, because that year was rough.
Honestly, with technology today, FaceTime and everything, like, I had friends who were in school, either they were finishing up their undergrad degree or they were also starting their master's, and one was even going into her PhD at that time. So we were all transitioning. We were all a part of a point in our lives when we were all transitioning into higher education, and would have our FaceTimes on, connecting to our phones, and just be there reading on mute. We would be reading our notes. But every once in a while, one of us would unmute and just make a noise, just to let the others know that we're still there. It was like the most random noise. It could just be like, like stuff like that, and we'd all like look up and laugh and smile, and those types of things made me realize, like, I wasn't alone. Yes, physically in my apartment I was alone, but emotionally, mentally, I knew people were going through the same thing as me. Like, I did it with you a couple of times. Me and you were like on all the time. After every class, because of that paper, we would log off a class and then log into our own private Zoom and just do work. The sun was out, and I remember a few times the sun was gone by the time we looked up, and it was like, okay.
That first year was wild.
It was very interesting, but I'm very happy of the fact that I had people going through the same thing at that time. Right now, everyone's basically done. Yeah. So if I were to have done it like right now, I don't know how I would survive either.
Well, overall, like, how was your grad experience? Did you have any hurdles that you had of your own that you had to go through?
Absolutely. In general, grad school's hard. It's not an easy thing to go through. It's a big transition, and then on top of that, we started it in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah. So that has its own hurdles to begin with, right? I know for me personally, the semester before grad school, I lost my grandpa. So then, that was at the beginning of the pandemic, and then summer came around, and then I started grad school. And so that was like a big transition, because then we're in the middle of quarantine. I can't see my friends like I used to. I'm holed up in my room all day in classes and meetings and research. So that was rough. I've always had like migraines since I was little. My migraines got really bad that first year. And I think it was a combination of like the stress from grad school, grief from losing my grandpa, anxiety about school, and a little bit of imposter syndrome in there too. And then just all those long hours on the computer, because when I say sun up to sundown, it was sun up to sundown on the computer. I think all of that combined made my migraines really bad. And that was probably one of the biggest hurdles my first year, was just my migraines were out of control in a way that they hadn't been for years. My body goes numb, like one side of my body goes numb. I get visual auras, so it's really hard for me to like see, read, write.
That's rough.
I get like a type of aphasia.
Oh my God.
So I can't really speak or read very well. There's a lot of like brain fog, confusion, nausea.
Oh my God.
It's rough. So when I have my migraine episodes, I'm out. Like, I just have to be asleep. And prior to grad school, I had them really under control. So I was only having maybe 1 or 2 a year. once grad school rolled around and all of these variables kind of came together, I was having at least one every couple of weeks, at least one. And there was some times throughout grad school where I had one migraine episode that lasted various days.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember there was one specific time where I had one of those migraine episodes, and that was probably the worst migraine episode I ever had. That aphasia and that like confusion brain fog lasted for like 3 or 4 days.
Oh my God.
And I remember it lined up with one of our papers that was due.
Oh no.
And so when I had it the first day, I remember I was like, okay, it'll pass. Usually my migraine episodes last 6 to 8 hours and then I'm good to go, right? Like I may be a little sleepy, a little tired, but I'll be good to go the next day. I was like maybe 4 or 5 days before the paper was due. I wake up the next day, I still have that migraine. I can't see, I can't read, I can't write, I can't like do anything. So I'm like, okay, this is not normal. My migraines don't last this long normally. This means that this one's going to be really bad. And so, you know, I like hopped on and started emailing the professor telling him like, listen, I am in a really bad migraine episode. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. Long story short, I ended up having to do the essay even with like my migraine episode kind of there. So that situation prompted me to finally contact the Office of Disability Services to get disability paperwork all squared away. So that way, when this happens again, because it was going to happen again, I didn't have any issues because that was rough.
Yeah.
And you can't predict when you're going to have a migraine episode. Like
No,
you
can't.
can avoid your triggers as much as possible. But at that point, my biggest trigger was stress. How are you going to avoid stress completely in grad school?
We can't really write our papers a week before. These papers are you know, a 24 to 48 hour advance type of thing. And a lot of the time I remember I was playing with the clock. I was just like, okay, let's see when I'm actually going to submit it. There were times when me and Ashley would play a game like who would get closest to midnight.
11:58.
11:58? No, 11:59 for me.
Yeah.
11:59. And it's like, you know, these professors really take off points if you send it in at midnight.
Yeah.
And that's what stinks because you're like, I put so much time. We have much like harder material, and 5 classes for us was more than enough. I don't understand how some people were taking 6. 5 classes, 5 papers due in 1 week. Oh my God, you best believe that adrenaline starts to kick in and you're like, I gotta do this. So hearing that, 5 days prior, you're just like, oh my God, this is like killing me. And knowing that you have a paper, like that's already anxiety inducing. And then I imagine when you were doing the paper, your anxiety was completely there.
Yeah, no, it was really bad. I remember I had a little bit of an anxiety attack that day when I was going on day 3 of still being in my migraine episode. I just broke down to my mom and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to get this paper in, like I'm gonna fail out of grad school, I'm gonna get a 0. They were worth like a lot. It was like 10 to 15% of your grade each paper. So I was like, I'm gonna fail. I can't afford to get a 0 on this paper. Like, I'm going to fail out of this class. I'm going to have to start over. My mind just, like, went. And I remember my mom, like, had to really calm me down and just be like, listen, you do what you can. Turn in what you can at this point. It is what it is, you know? But I was like, nope, I'm going to fail out of grad school. This is it. I'm never going to be able to recover from this. I don't know why this keeps happening to me. You know, your mind gets the best of you in those situations. And that obviously also didn't help my migraine. So
we were supposed to meet up when you got this big migraine. I remember you sent me an email and it was like, it wasn't the best email, so I was like, what is going on with her?
Oh my God.
No, it's bad. When I say I get aphasia, I mean like really badly. Like I had to have my mom proofread that paper before I sent it in because I'm thinking like dog. I'll put in fog instead of dog.
Oh my God.
Like that's how bad it is. So sometimes the sentences that I write when I'm like deep into these migraine episodes, they don't make sense.
That's crazy.
But in my mind, I'm putting what I want to put. But that's just part of the aura that I get, part of the symptoms. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it makes it really difficult to do schoolwork when I'm having these episodes. You weren't the only one that got nonsensical emails that time around.
The fact that you've been dealing with this since you were a kid, wow. From when it sounds like stress is one of your triggers.
It's probably the biggest trigger right now. When I was a kid, the biggest trigger was chocolate. But chocolate's easy to avoid. That's why I don't eat chocolate now.
Chocolate is high in caffeine.
I don't even think it's the caffeine though, because I drink coffee like crazy and I'm fine.
Oh.
I think it's the cocoa in it.
Oh.
Because I noticed that when I eat like white chocolate, I've never gotten a migraine from eating white chocolate. Milk chocolate's like a 50-50. Dark chocolate, 100% I'm gonna get a migraine. So I think it's the cocoa content in the chocolate. That's my assumption. But when I was a kid, that was my biggest trigger. And that's how I found out that I had migraines, is because I like went on a little chocolate binge. And then the next day at school, I got a migraine and I thought I was dying. Since then, we kind of figured out the pattern where it was like, okay, every time you eat chocolate, you get a migraine. So don't eat chocolate. Yeah. So that, you can control because it's a food. You can just not eat that food. But when it comes to stress, I mean, you can reduce stress as much as you want, right? But stress is a part of life. It's going to come.
It is.
So
let me ask you, with the migraines, currently in your job, is that something that you've disclosed to your boss about your migraines?
Yes. So I definitely learned from grad school. I gave them all the same paperwork that I gave Office of Disabilities at school. I gave it to my work, particularly because I was asking for accommodations within work. I don't do well with like the lighting, the office lighting. It's like too harsh for me, because I'm also very like photosensitive when it comes to my migraines. So that was one of the accommodations that I was asking for, is to be able to turn off the overhead lights and then just have lamps and stuff in my office so that it's softer, warmer lights. And because of accreditation reasons, I had to have, the paperwork in there saying like it's because of a disability that I need this. I submitted the paperwork and it hasn't been an issue. I've had a couple migraine episodes at work and they've been really understanding about it. So it wasn't until we studied disability in school that I kind of came to the realization that my migraines are a disability, right? Because up until then I was just like, oh, it's a headache that I get.
Yeah.
But even though it was disabling when I had it, right? I'm like, well, I only get episodes every once in a while. So how disabling is it, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't until school where I was like, no, like this is a disability, right? Because I can't do the things that I can normally do when I have an episode. So this is a time where I do need accommodations. I'm super grateful for school that it gave me that.
Yeah. Has anybody given you a hard time about your episodes? Has there ever been a time when people are like, oh, it's just a headache? Like
oh, absolutely. Yeah. All through growing up. I remember even prior to like being an adult, right? My first job, I worked at a store as a sales associate. And I remember, I think I was like 18 or 19 at this point. It was like right after high school. I had a migraine episode while I was at work. And at that point I was working as one of the cashiers. And I remember I went up to my boss and I was like, I need to go home. And he was like, well, why? And I said, because I have a migraine episode and, it's going to start getting really bad. Like it's starting now. I need to call my mom to come get me because I can't drive myself home. He looked at me and he goes, oh, you're just hungover. What? Because I probably should have said this before. This was the day after New Year's.
Oh. So he made an assumption.
He made an assumption. And I said, no, I'm not hungover. I just told you I'm having a migraine episode. I've had migraines since I was a kid, and my migraines get really bad. So I'm not asking you if I can go home. I'm telling you that I'm going to clock out and I'm going to go home and my mom's going to come get me because I cannot drive myself home. And he just kept insisting, no, like you're just hungover. Like you can just go back to the register. And I said,
oh, God,
I'm not having this conversation with you. I'm going home. I'm calling my mother because it's going to get really bad. And to be honest, if you keep me here, I'm going to throw up all over your floor. So I'm going to go to the break room. I'm going to clock out and I'm going to wait for my mom to pick me up. And I just ended the conversation and I left. And that's normally super out of character for me.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't the first time that something like that had happened to me. And at that point, I was just done, right? Because you get this pushback where it's like, oh, you're fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just a headache.
And that's frustrating.
It's so frustrating. So that was the first time that I think I really stood up for myself. And then he came back later while I was waiting for my mom in the break room, and he saw the change in me. Mind you, this was like a 5 to 10 minute like span of time from me telling him that I needed to go home, going back to the back to clock out and wait for my mom. And you could visibly tell that something was wrong with me. Like, I went from my normal perky self to I'm like laying down, like my head's in my hands. I'm just trying to not lose it, basically. And he came back and he apologized. He was like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that it was that bad. And I said, yeah, when I tell you I have to call my mom to pick me up, I mean, like, I'm gonna have to leave my car here overnight, and my parents are probably gonna have to come pick it up because I can't drive myself.
Going back to grad school, is there something that you wish you would have learned in grad school that could help you now at your job?
I think we focused a lot on career counseling, which obviously, you know, that was our degree, so that was part of it. But while I think that's been helpful to kind of be able to guide my clients towards some of the resources that are out there, I really wish that we had the opportunity to dive more into addictions and substance use counseling, because I took the substance use elective that we had, so I had a little bit more. I just wish we had more of that. I wish that we had had more trauma classes, because that was probably my favorite class throughout grad school.
It was.
And it's something that, I mean, I use every day. Even though my focus is not in trauma, I use it every day. Going to that class was like a mini counseling session within itself, because she would ask us about our experiences, and we would dissect our experiences within that class.
I remember specifically one day we walked in and she had a chair in the middle of the in the front of the class, and we're all like really confused as to why there's a chair. And she's like, okay, I need a volunteer. One of our classmates went up and whispered in her ear what to do. We had no idea what was going on. Oh my God. All we knew was that we had to basically get her to talk. I remember Gaby was a few tables behind me. I was like, I sat in the front, and I remember she was still like this with her head down like this, and we just asked questions. We were asking all these questions. I think it kind of all hit us that we were just like, wait, we're asking her questions that we know nothing about. If it actually does go to her. I don't remember who started it, but we're like, can you lift a finger? Can you move your toes?
Oh my God.
Can you slowly move your neck? And slowly but surely, like, our classmate, she was just like moving her fingers, moving her toes, moving her head. But that was a lesson based on how people in traumatic situations can just go absolutely paralyzed after a traumatic event, and that was teaching us how to communicate with somebody even though they are unable to communicate with us, and how to get them out of that mindset of what just happened to them.
Oh my God.
It was interesting.
It was super interesting. And I think that time she had a couple people do like different examples. That one was the freeze, or I think she did fight. She did, because I don't think anybody wanted to try that one. I think she did fight.
We're not good actors.
Yeah. We're counselors. We're not actors.
With her acting, that was like the most impactful one, because she didn't break at all.
Yeah.
And I think I got scared at one point, because like she made it so real, and that's when it hit me, at least, that it was like, this can be a real situation. I've been in some situations now where, thinking back to them, like, that was a good practice for real life, because people freeze up, people are in fight mode or even flight. Like, it's bad how all of a sudden I've seen people anxious, looking around, and then immediately like locating where the door is, and before you know it, they're out the door. That was a good way to essentially prepare us, but ultimately I don't think we'll ever be fully prepared.
Yep.
Well, the field that we're in is constantly evolving. We're constantly learning. This career is not like a one and done school kind of situation. There's a reason we have CEUs, right?
Yeah.
We have to continue to learn because the field is constantly evolving.
What was that one thing or things that made you want to be in the mental health field?
Ooh. I don't think there was one particular thing. In high school, I took a psychology AP course, and that was my introduction, right? So I kind of fell in love with the field of psychology in high school. And then as I started to learn more about it in that class, right, it kind of dawned on me that our community really just we don't take mental health seriously, right? It's kind of like, it doesn't happen. We don't talk about it. If you're struggling with your mental health, you keep that silent, and you don't get help unless it's like really bad. And even if you do get help, you don't tell anybody that you're getting help, right? So for me, the interest started in school, but then when I started to realize there's not many of us from, the Hispanic community in the field that understand that this is how our community views it. That's a niche that needs to be fitted, right? And then I also speak Spanish. So that's something that working in the field now, you realize how necessary that is.
Yep.
I mean, at the agency that I'm at now, there's 2 of us that speak Spanish, and we're in a predominantly Hispanic area. So the need is there. There's just not enough of us to serve the community, unfortunately.
Now, you deal with a heavy population, because for me personally, I don't know if I could do individuals like who struggle with like substance use, alcohol, and all that, because I have family members who struggle with alcohol issues, and I feel like I would want them to get better more than they would want to get better. So I'd be like,
putting your all in it.
Exactly, and I would just be like losing it if they didn't get better, Have you ever experienced countertransference?
Yes, the short answer is yes, right? But I think for me, framing it differently has helped, and also, talking about it in supervision, but definitely being able to see people's successes has been helpful in that sense too, right? Especially when you look at it from a harm reduction perspective, because, okay, maybe, the client doesn't stop using completely, but they reduce their use. Yeah, that's a massive victory in the grand scheme of addiction, right? So getting to see that up close and personal, that has made the difficult times much easier. And then when, some of that countertransference does come up, right? Because I also have addiction within my family, talking about it with the supervisor, talking about it with my personal therapist, like all of that kind of stuff has helped manage those situations.
How did your family support you in getting a counselor, or did you even tell them that you got a therapist? And if so, how did they support you?
Yeah, my parents knew that I was seeing a therapist while I was in grad school. And I think it was just kind of like, I told them that I needed it, and they were like, okay, cool. But I also think my parents are a little bit more progressive and understanding, and probably also because this is the career field that I chose, right? So they backed me 100%.
Because in the Hispanic culture, like, therapy is seen as like you're weak or you're crazy, and like, so generally, right?
I get told a million times a day, oh, you work with some locos?
Yeah.
Yeah, or the reaction that I got from my family when I told them that I was going to grad school for counseling, they were like, oh, you have plenty within the family. I said, okay, but maybe get help? Because I'm not the person for that, but I can help you look for resources if you're interested.
Have you guys gotten the question where it's just like, oh, mija, like, go help your cousin, go help this, go help that?
All the time.
Yep.
For me,
like, can you talk to them?
Yeah.
Yes. Again, I have a family member who struggles with alcohol, right? I've had family members that are like, oh, like, you're a therapist, like, you should go help your brother and like use what you learned and apply it to him. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way though. I feel like nobody understands unless you're actually in the field. And plus, it's unethical. In the code of ethics, it says it's that you shouldn't be, counseling your family members if you can't be, like, have a bias or unbiased perspective. Which one is it?
Yeah. The way that I always deal with it in my family is I'm just straight up with them, right? I tell them, ethically, I can't do that. I can't be their counselor. They're my family member. I love them to death, but I can't do that. What I can do is if they want, I can help them find the resources.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to look up, counselors nearby or agencies nearby, harm reduction centers, whatever it may be, right? I'd be more than happy to look up the resources and give it to them, but I can't be that person for them.
It brings all this pressure because now that you're this professional, like, they're depending on you to, like, take action and help your family out. And it's a lot,
Yeah, it's a lot. I think that's where healthy boundaries come in. Speaking about boundaries, as family members, our part is to be there for the family, right? As a family member, not as a professional. So that's the part that I try to make clear to my family is when I'm dealing with my family, I'm not coming into it as a professional. Even though I have this education, right? I can't separate my personal feelings from my family.
Yeah.
I fear to address that with my family because I don't want them to take it the wrong way, for them to think like, oh, like I'm neglecting this person and I don't want to help them, So it's hard for me to be able to communicate like this isn't something that I should be doing and it's unethical. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. It's definitely different with some families than others.
Yeah.
The ones who try to understand the most are our parents, seeing as we are in the field.
Yeah.
But then I feel like our extended family sees it as, this is your profession. This is this. You should be doing this. When honestly, at the end of the day, it's more like, personally, I'm a 9 to 5. I try to, the second my computer's off, I am gone. I am in the car. I am blasting the music. So, yes, it's true. Sometimes some cases have stayed with me for longer than they should. And those are the cases that sometimes I see myself getting a little too involved in, and then I have to remind myself to take a step back because I'm doing the most that I can with them. It's up to them at a certain point to actually continue making that effort if they want to continue. And it's kind of like what I tell my clients and their parents when they're minors, that, everything that I teach them in session, they also have to continue the instruction at home because I can only do so much. It can go many ways. I feel like our families are our biggest supporters in everything.
Why did you decide to stay here and start your career here versus going back to Florida and maybe working on getting your license in Florida and, starting your career over there?
Well, I figured I already started my hours here because of internship, and New Jersey has stricter licensure requirements.
Yeah.
So I figured, okay, I might as well just stay and finish it out, and then if I decide to go back to Florida, then I can just get my license in Florida, and then I'll be licensed in 2 states.
So again, you work with individuals who struggle with substance use and all that. Do you see yourself doing this career-wise for the rest of your life? Do you have a specific career goal in mind, like an end goal in mind when it comes to the mental health field?
I know.
Eventually, I want to go back for a PhD in clinical psychology. I know we did, yeah. No, not for a good couple years because I need a break. But yeah, eventually I see myself going back to school and getting a PhD. I don't think I want to be a professor, but I think it's always been a goal of mine to get a doctorate. Plus, it'd be kind of cool to do formal evaluations and stuff. So
That'd be cool. Yeah, we had a similar conversation. I've had it with both of you, where the end goal is a PhD. I think I cringe every time we talk about PhD. I really do. So, funny story. After I waited a month. I didn't wait a month. No, I made it 2 weeks after school ended. We were FaceTiming, and she was just like, "What do we do now, Sammy?" And I said, on to the next thing. She's like, what's that? And I said, PhD. And she's like, maybe. So then we started looking up everything. And then like 20 minutes later, I just got a headache reading everything needed for the programs. At that time, I had made a goal, or at least a plan A and plan B. Plan A is waiting 5 years. So I'm already 2 years in. Mm-hmm. In 5 years, I'm going to reevaluate where I am. I'm going to see if I'm going to go for the PhD, or if I just like the job that I'm at right now, like the field, and want to continue doing everything. If I go for my PhD, that's another 6 to 7 years of my life.
Yeah.
That I cannot get back. If I choose to just stay where I am, then that's when I'll go into looking for a house. And possibly, just starting my actual life. Because right now, I'm starting my life, but I'm more focused on my career, if anything. Mm-hmm. Those at least are, for me, my plans A and plan B. Both of them consist of me finishing up my hours and getting my full licensure, though, because it's a good backup.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at, too, is I don't want to consider like going back to school until I'm done with the licensure process. I want to be fully licensed and have that down before I even think about going back to school.
Especially because we've gone so far with it. We have done the work, we spent the money, and where we are today. And this is our second year going. Well, we're going into our second year of ours, and so we've already spent a whole year doing this, so it's like, might as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so you emphasize wanting to get your PhD, right? I feel like that's how you want to get to your big picture career goal, but like what exactly is it then? Because I know you said that you want to do evaluations, but is there anything else that you want to do?
I think eventually I want to set up a private practice, like way down the road.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I think for now I'm really happy in like the community practice kind of setting, nonprofit setting, especially with the populations that I want to work with. This is where I need to be because I want to work with Hispanic clients, first of all, because I speak Spanish. It's just more accessible than private practice a lot of the times because it's hard to get like Medicaid approved as a private practice. So I think this is where I want to be for now, at least for the foreseeable future. Once, if I go back and get my doctorates and then decide to set up a private practice, we'll reevaluate. But I think even in private practice, I think I would still like to do some per diem hours in like a nonprofit setting because that's kind of where my heart drew me in the first place.
And it's great that you have that goal because it looks like we have our similar goal of going into clinical psych in some way. For yours is clinical psychology, mine's clinical neuropsych, and it's within the same field but also doing the same thing of assessments and more hands-on work and research. So it looks like we're continuing our many late nights looking at our computers and continuing those research paths.
If I were to go back for my doctorate, I would get my PsyD instead of my PhD because I hate research. I'll do it for school, for the sake of school, but like I hate it. I don't want to do it. I don't want that to be my focus, So like, I don't know about you guys. I don't know how you guys did it, especially during grad school. But like for me, I would want to focus more on the clinical aspect.
Yeah, and I get where you're coming from too. I am more hands-on, if anything. I don't know about you. I do like the research portion of it. However, the main reason as to why I would go for a PhD, and I've done some research on it. So PsyD, you had to pay out of pocket.
That I know.
You had to pay thousands out of pocket, and it hurts to even think about. Because of the loan and debt that we're in right now, adding to it, it hurts my soul. A PhD, you have many options in terms of funding. You can get grants funding, or you can go into a research lab where you continue doing your research while getting paid a stipend and getting your schooling paid in general. Yes, it's a little longer because you have to defend your paper, your dissertation. You have to do a lot more stuff, but at least you're not coming out with more debt.
Yeah,
and
unfortunately,
I think that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
The money's in the research. If you want to get any assistance in paying studying for a doctorate, you got to do research.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at too. Because originally I wanted this ID because I wanted to focus on the clinical part of it. I like research, but it's not like I don't want to do research forever. I also can't afford to be broke. So
I believe after the postdoc, once you actually like have your feet in the ground, you start working on your own terms. That's when you start seeing the money. But that's a good 2 to 3 years on top of the 7.
yeah.
So that's about 10 years total. So gonna be what, almost 40 by that time?
God.
So if I start seeing money by the time I'm 40, I might cry a little bit, but at least I know it's worth it.
Yeah, but let's be honest though. When we go into this career field, we're not in it for the money. Like,
We're not.
this is not a career field where you're gonna be a millionaire. It's just
You're
not.
And that's how I know, at least me, I know that if you're in this field, you're genuinely passionate about it because, as we know, this is not the money grabber field. We do a lot of the hard work. We do talk to people, and even though some may say, this should be a field where there's more money because of the mental exhaustion that we put ourselves through, it's not there. And it's not the career for people who want to see that money here and now. It's a career that's very passion driven.
100%.
And dedication is definitely like a big thing here. You need patience, and it's not going to change, So anybody out there who is looking for a money career, this ain't it.
Sometimes I question how certain people are therapists too. Like I've met coworkers and stuff that like, I don't know, like they're so cold. I feel like as a therapist, you have to have the personality. I feel like that's the most important thing in order to build a relationship with a client,
But you know what? I will say that I think there's a therapist out there for everybody.
Touché.
Because some people may respond to that better,
Touché.
right?
Yeah.
Like, it works for some people, right?
Yeah, some people prefer somebody who is more boundary driven, I guess, than somebody who is hyper and willing to talk about anything and everything and doesn't have that many boundaries with their clients. I also have seen clients who don't want to talk to me. They're just like minimum one word phrases like, I'm okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. And that's literally the most that I get. And a majority of those people are teenagers.
Teens are hard.
And so it really depends, But I do agree with building boundaries.
Now I'm going to give you the final question.
Okay.
So, where's your mental health at today? And when it's in a bad place, how does that affect you and your work as a therapist with your clients?
So today, pretty good. pretty happy, pretty high up there, right? That's not to say that that's what it's like every day, right? Because there's definitely tough days. On the tough days, that's where, every day, right? But especially on the tough days is where I like really focus on the self-care. Or I try to at least, right? Because it's not always possible to do everything that I want to do, but I try to focus a little bit more on the self-care on the tough days. So I know like if I had a really tough day at work, for example, then that's the day where I'm like, all right, you know what? I don't want to cook today. I'm going to treat myself to a dinner out. Either I'll go out or I'll go get something or I'll order in or whatever, right? I will heavily lean on my friends, calling my best friend. I don't normally say like what happened in the day, right? But I'll be like, yeah, it was a tough day. I just want to like distract myself. I want to talk. Yeah. Just things like that. If I don't do that, then absolutely it affects your work, right? Because then that's how burnout happens. That's how compassion fatigue happens. That's how we kind of just lose it at work, right? Like I never want to get to that point.
So it's never happened to you before?
Not full out. There's always signs of burnout, right? But I don't think I've ever gotten to the point where like I 100% dread going to work, right? It's more so like, okay, I'm tired, right? Or recently things have been hard. That's when I challenge myself to say yes to everything, right? When my friends ask me, hey, do you want to go hang out today? Yes. even if I don't want to, yes, I'm going, right?
Yeah.
So
Kind of force yourself.
kind of force myself, yeah, because when I am burnt out, I want to isolate. I don't want to do things. I want to stay home. I want to lay in my bed. I want to watch TV. I don't want to talk to anybody. So I know that I can't do that because it's just going to cycle. It's going to get worse and it's going to get worse. So I try to do the opposite of that.
I also experienced burnout too. When I was around September, I was working my big girl job that I have now,
I remember.
Yeah,
and then also working private here. Actually, I was doing the two jobs at the same time. So I'd be basically working from 7 a.m. until 8:30 p.m. every day, and then I'd be driving from one job to another. And there was a point where I was literally falling asleep on a client.
Yeah. That's when
Yep,
you know.
that's when you know, yeah.
That specific day, that's when I was like, okay, that's it for me.
Yep.
I was struggling though because I was thinking if I leave, I'm letting my clients down. Because I care more about my clients more than myself a lot of the times, honestly. Forget about me, but what about them, right?
I think that's such a valid point, though. As counselors, it's hard to put yourself first, I think, sometimes, right? In putting yourself first at times, you're also acting in the best interest of your clients because,
That's true.
you know, if we're falling asleep in sessions, if we're burnt out, if we are in full out compassion fatigue, are we showing up as our best professional selves for our clients? The answer is probably not, right? So I think that's where putting yourself first is in their benefit.
Where are you at emotionally today? How's your mental health today?
Today's pretty good. This weekend has already started off good. Out of 10, I give it a solid 8.
Love that.
It's a round number.
That's a pretty good number. All right. Well, for me, I think this week I'm feeling overwhelmed because when my loved ones are going through something, I tend to internalize their emotions. All of their emotions rub off on me, and then I feel it. I was anxious all week this week because of all these emotions that are coming
For
through
a
me.
pretty fair reason, though. This also was a really hard week in general.
Yeah.
It's valid
Yeah.
to make yourself feel some type of way or have other feelings of other people kind of attribute to how you're feeling.
Yeah, I didn't think about that either. I don't know. Sometimes I don't think about these things. For context, my mom's death anniversary had passed this last Saturday. Right now it's July 8th. She passed away July 1st. You know, I've been dealing with that, the fact that it's been a year, and again, internalizing other people's emotions. So it's a lot. I guess I'm just feeling so many emotions at once that I'm just I don't know what to feel. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't
Actually,
know.
when you talk about emotions and other people, you're like a sponge. You literally absorb everybody's emotions, and
Yeah, I do.
You're it's good and it's bad. It's good because when people are happy around you, you're really happy, you're really get going, and then when people are sad around you, then that affects your mood as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's different.
Well, and it's probably that same empathy that brought you to this field anyway, right? Because that's essentially empathy is
It's true.
empathizing with people's feelings, right?
It's true.
Empathy is a huge thing in this field, and if we don't have it, we're not gonna succeed in it.
So how do you care for yourself when you're trying to care for other people?
Same question I've been asking her for the past 3 years.
Oh man. Well, so how do I care for myself? So that's a good question. I will talk to my friends. I'll FaceTime her, or I'll FaceTime any of my other friends that give me a lot of comfort and kind of remind me you're doing okay, right? I like to get my nails done.
Ooh.
Yes.
I really like to get my nails done. It's my biggest form of self-care because I don't know, there's something about picking out the designs that's all fun and just watching them do the nails, and I get so happy doing it. And then just spending time with my dad, because
great.
my dad's the only one I really have left. So those are the things that help me in terms of self-care. I'll go on a drive here and there sometimes. I hate driving, but when I do,
I love driving.
I'm a very anxious driver. I don't like when people get in the car with me because I'm just a very anxious driver, and it's just but anyways, I'll go on drives just to clear my head or something like that. But that's what I do for self-care.
What do you do to help with your wellness?
Ooh, I like painting. So
Okay. Oh, she a painter?
okay, I'm not like a professional. No, but I do. I like creative things. So like DIYs, painting. When I first moved here, I like sanded and painted and did all the stuff with like Facebook Marketplace furniture.
What?
Yeah, because I was like, you know what? Might as well. Like, I like doing it.
So you know how to do all that stuff. Okay, so now
Okay, I'm not a professional. Let's but like, hold the train.
I need my drawer painted if you want to do that.
I mean, I could try. I'm not telling you it's going to turn out like professional quality, but
It's fine. It's fine.
But yeah, no, the creative stuff for sure. I like collecting like vinyls and records.
Interesting.
When it's like a particularly stressful day, I like to go home and just like put on a record and just lay out on my couch and listen to music. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll paint and do that. I like cooking, so I'll do that. I go to the gym occasionally.
Occasionally.
Some weeks I'm better than others.
I also started boxing. That's also my self-care.
Ooh, okay.
I love boxing.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I also do boxing. Shout out to Rockbox Fitness because they were the ones who reached out to me on Instagram.
Oh, really?
And they were like, you should try 3 free classes. And then I was like, no, I don't know if I could do it because of my disability. Mm-hmm. You know, it's probably not going to work out. So don't worry about it. They were like, bet, we're going to challenge you.
I love that.
No, yeah, they were like, you know, like, we'll make it work for you.
Yeah.
Just try it out. So I was like, okay. And I loved it ever since because, like, the trainers over there are super, like, they're so empathetic. Mm-hmm. They listen to you. And I really appreciate that they accommodate everything to my needs and, like, they just try to make it work for me. And I feel so included there, you know?
That's so important, too, because any kind of gym, I think, can feel really exclusionary if you're not the gym bro or like if you're anything but that, it can feel really exclusionary and really daunting to go to the gym.
Yeah.
So it's great that you've found a place that makes you feel at home and comfortable and
I do.
And accommodating.
I do. But is there anything else that you do?
I actually do like to drive, so so I'll go on drives. When I lived in Florida, I like to do like water sport type of things, like paddleboarding or kayaking. I haven't done that here. I'm sure I could do it here, but
You gotta drive a little bit.
I haven't done that yet.
To do that.
Do you like it here?
Well, yeah, I miss home, but also I go back home like every 2 or 3 months. So even if it's just for a weekend.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. No, but I really like it here.
Like, do you have this big desire to want to go home at all, or?
I do have a big desire to go home, but I don't think it's because of like Florida. I think it's because of my parents, because I'm really close to my parents.
Fair.
So I think the desire to go home is more so to see my parents rather than to like see Florida, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I grew up mostly in Florida, I didn't really experience seasons. You know, Florida has like a season and a half.
Today's crazy.
It's like summer and then like half of a winter, but winter's more like fall really because it doesn't get super cold in Florida. So it just, you don't really see like the leaves change like they do here. You sure don't see any snow over there. Being here for that has been really nice too. And also just Jersey has some really nice gardens and stuff like that. And I like outdoorsy things, so
Also
that's been nice.
experiencing the humidity.
Okay, but this humidity is nothing like Florida humidity. Florida humidity? Okay.
Oh yeah, she's only been there like once.
Well, picture you take like a towel and you dunk it in your bathtub and then you just wear it out all day.
Oh, ew.
So that's how it feels to like walk around in Florida. So this humidity, I'm like chilling, I'm cool. But Florida humidity is no joke.
That's so funny.
It is hot.
I know I said that was the last question like 5 questions ago, but like, what does a mental breakdown look like to you guys?
You saw me have it.
If you see me cut my hair really, really short up to my shoulders, I had a mental breakdown.
Okay.
Oh no, for me it's not I don't change anything physically. I get on a plane.
Oh, she said travel.
I'm a traveler. I don't change anything physically. I change my actual location.
Okay.
And I'm gone.
For me, I also isolate, and then I just get into this big depression, and I can't get out of bed. I can't, like, I just can't function. That's it.
I would say that's probably mine too. I don't think I changed anything physically about me, but I noticed that I just like shut down. Like I'm just like, yoop, done. Like that's it.
Do you bottle your emotions in?
Yes and no. That is my nature, right? That's what I'm used to doing. I have gotten much better at not doing that. As I've gotten older, as I've gone to therapy, as I went to school, I think I've gotten much better at not doing that. But it's something that I have to be consciously aware of, if that makes sense. Like that's going to be my go-to. And then I'm like, don't do that. Like that only leads to isolation, which leads to you making yourself feel worse, basically. And so I have to like consciously make that decision of, okay, you're not feeling well today, right? Like you're feeling really low, you're feeling not happy, you're feeling whatever, sad, anything, right? Call your best friend, call your mom, even if you don't talk about what it is that you're like feeling in that moment, right? Because sometimes I can't talk about it in the moment. Sometimes it has to be like a couple days later. But the day that I'm feeling it, just call somebody to get your mind off of it at the very least. And then usually a couple days later, then I'll be like, yeah, I was having a really rough time and I just needed to talk to someone.
Well, I still live at home. So my mom and my dad, they're really good at reading me. And they're really good at knowing when something's wrong. And so
Mine too.
I love
parents, man.
No, parents, seriously.
It's like you birthed me and you know me? What?
They're really good at reading me. I wonder why. My parents are very supportive. They're really good at listening and what I talk about. But there's some things that I just don't want to talk about because then I feel like it's too much for anybody to listen to because in a way it may traumatize them with how, for instance, my job may be or the things that I've heard at work that are tough on a person and then they probably think, this is our daughter over here, how is it not tough for her? How is that a thing? And then it could lead to, well, why don't you just quit? Why are you doing this if it's so mentally draining? And to avoid that conversation, I do what you do where I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it. But sometimes they push a little bit and they're like, oh, come on, what is it? You can talk to us. And I'm just like, nobody really can't. I want to talk, but give me a few days.
Well, and I think in those situations too, that's where it's helpful to have each other, right? Because we've talked about it before, right? People who aren't therapists, who aren't counselors, social workers, they can empathize, right? But they never know what it's like to be in our shoes, whereas we know. Just the general feelings of, hey, today was a really hard day at work. Like
we already get the gist.
Yeah, like it's been a heavy day. Sometimes you don't even have to explain it. It's just saying like, hey, it's been a really heavy day for me. Like you get it.
Yeah.
You know what it's like to have a heavy day at work.
That's why we got each other's backs.
Yep.
I love it.
I remember we talked about this. We've talked about this a few times where we'll be like, yeah, we don't want to talk to people on that day. So there will be days when I go home and I'm just like not talking. I'm a mute. I don't want to say anything. Yesterday was one of those days for me where I got home, changed into some comfy clothes, and I took a nap.
Yeah.
And
she really knocked you.
I knocked out to the point that she called me, and I don't remember having the conversation with her.
That's crazy to me. I would have never noticed.
I didn't know that. I don't remember talking to her.
You were probably still half asleep.
I definitely was, because I think I knocked out maybe around 4:30, something like that, after work. And then I kept feeling my phone vibrate, and I remember my phone vibrating and my watch vibrating, and I kept saying, why doesn't no one let me sleep?
And no one is Ashley.
And no one is Missy over here with 2 missed FaceTime calls.
Sometimes you just have those days. I've definitely had those days where I get home from work and I'm exhausted, but I don't realize how exhausted I am. And so I'll sit down to watch TV, and next thing I know, I'm waking up 2 hours later, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, you don't really know how exhausted you are.
Yeah.
And then when you have those heavy days, for me, it could be 1 week is heavy clinical, another week can be heavy paperwork, and I think they both hit the same. Because even though you're not mentally exhausted from talking to your clients, you're still exhausted from filling out loads and loads and loads of paperwork.
Yeah.
And it hits differently, but you're still exhausted.
Honestly, I think the documentation and the case management part of it is the most exhausting part of the job for me.
Very much so.
I think the clinical part where I like talk to my clients and
That's
we
fun.
have the
Yeah.
sessions, that's great. Like I love that. Usually when I'm exhausted, it's because I've had to do so much documentation or I've had to do so much case management that day that it's just like I'm tapped out.
It's like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
On that note, I think we got everything.
I think we did.
We talked about a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, we hit a lot of stuff.
Thank you so much for being so open with us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, follow our Instagram page, which is Therapists_Unmasked. We'll see you guys next time, okay? Bye.